Well, this next story is an inspiring one about how local entrepreneur and co-founder of Buffalo Fashion Runway, Chad Williams, turned his wrongful arrest into a billboard success. Take a look.
I was all the way ignorant to the fact that this could potentially happen to me.
Chad Williams grew up doing things the right way in his eyes, pursuing a higher education, staying true to his faith, and always trying to better himself. The year is 2019. The then 21-year-old Chad Williams was a hardworking student at Buffalo State, figuring out where his life was heading.
Just being a kid from Brooklyn, New York, a lot of people tend maybe to not go to college, not to pursue a higher degree, but I thought that was the right way of doing things, so I went to college, was doing everything right, was working a job.
But one night out on Chippewa Street, his junior year changed the course of his life forever.
So we were going to a venue downtown on Chippewa on Buffalo. It was me and a few other friends, and one of the friends wasn't feeling too well, so she was gonna go home. So we called her Uber.
After a while of trying to help his friend find her Uber, they located the car only to find the door locked.
Tried to assist her in the car, but the door was locked. I then looked to the Uber driver and asked him tell him that this is our Uber. Can you open the door? He just waves at me. He's like, no, 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 no. So in my head, I'm like, what's going on with this guy? So I go around to his side of the car, and then I see he's like bleeding down the whole left side of his face. So at this point in my head, I'm like, what's going on?
Within minutes and the point of a finger, Chad ended up in a position he never expected to find himself in.
Two officers come from behind me. They ask him, are you the one who called in the assault? He says yes. They asked him who did it. He pointed towards me.
All that was running through Chad's mind was fear.
I am super scared for my life. What could happen in that moment in time right there? Something goes wrong. If I was to resist, what could happen, right? And then also I'm scared for like my future, right? So like just knowing that I potentially could have something on the record for the rest of my life, not being able to get a job. Just being a black man in America in itself is hard, right? But being a black man in America with something on their record, it's 10 times as harder, right? So what path would that potentially lead me on? Yeah, no, it was terrifying.
The next morning, Chad was arraigned and began the odyssey that would go on for nearly a year, trying to prove his innocence, even while being pushed to take a plea deal.
Right, I was offered the plea deal. Yeah, lesser sentence to say that I did the crime. But me just being the person, right, that I am, I know I didn't do that crime, so I would never say that I did that crime, even if it came with the lesser sentence, right?
He found himself looking to the judges for help and understanding, but wasn't given the empathy.
Thought she would see my side of the story, but she looked at me as if I was the devil himself, right? She had no type of like remorse in her eyes.
Eventually, after many court dates, Williams was found not guilty, but this traumatic situation was the catapult to something much greater for him.
I always had a strong love for fashion just from like growing up. And then my newfound love for activism, basically the two pillars behind due process, right? So like my newest collection that's out is fashion and activism. It was a collection that's real near and dear to my heart. Due process meaning fair treatment through the judicial system, something that I didn't receive and many others don't receive. So I felt like it was a perfect name for the brand, and I want to use this as like a catalyst to like help people who potentially could be going through a similar situation as myself, help them know that there's always like a light at the end of the tunnel, and to this, always keep your head up.
A year ago, Chad connected with a group of friends he now calls his brothers, who collaborated to create a fashion house called Buffalo Fashion Runway.
Buffalo Fashion Runway is a platform. We're actually in our year anniversary month right now. It's a platform dedicated to showcasing local designers and artists, and then like just showing them to a wider audience in Buffalo. So we had our first show on September 16th, the Confluence of the Arts.
That show had over 200 people in attendance. 6 months later, they threw their second fashion show that had over 400 people in the building. Just this year, a full circle moment of triumph happened for Chad.
You brought me downtown to Chippewa, Delaware area. Tell me about why this place is significant for you.
Like I knew the billboard was coming up, I knew it was coming on the street, but I didn't realize it at first until I actually got to the street. I was like, oh shoot. 4 or 5 years ago, I was actually wrongfully arrested right there, and then I told my partners. And then also, huge shout out to Yves Blanc, the Headshot King in Buffalo, for the partnership and the collaboration for helping Buffalo Fashion Runway get on this billboard. Definitely a surreal moment, and I actually I teared up a little bit because I'm looking at the billboard and I'm looking right down the street. I was like, yo, 4 years ago, I was out bad down the street, and now I have a billboard, a triumphant victory looking over that wrongful arrest. Right?
Now, Chad is a full-time entrepreneur for his business Due Process, celebrating milestones with Buffalo Fashion Runway through events and fashion shows, and continuing to champion anyone the justice system has failed to give their due process to. Well, you can keep up with Chad by following him on social media or purchasing his merch from dueprocess.com. And keep an eye out for Buffalo Fashion Runway's upcoming fall show, Emergence. Tickets will be on sale soon. For that, so follow them on Instagram and social media or just visit their website at buffalofashionrunway.com.